रिकॉर्डिंग
आगे
स्टार्ट थोड़ी हो गया।
हो गई सर, हो गई।
अब इसको पोस्ट
Good morning to one and all. We are happy to see so many people joining for the session, that too on a Sunday. But on a lighter note, one can also say that every day now looks to be a Sunday, considering the lockdown. So whether it's a Monday or a Sunday, it is all the same. So I'm happy to now introduce the speaker for today's session, CA Ashish Chaudhary. Ashish Chaudhary is a chartered accountant who was qualified in the year November 2009. And he has a meritorious academic background with All India rank in CA final, CA Inter and CS final. He has exposure to international taxation and has actively contributed in implementation of VAT in Dubai. He has been a special invitee of the Indirect Tax Committee of ICAI during the period 2016 to 2019, and is also a recognized faculty of ICAI for taking certification course in indirect tax. He is also a prolific speaker, having addressed more than 200 seminars on indirect tax across various educational, trade and professional bodies. He is also co-authored books on central excise service tax and GST, and he has also contributed to the background material and other publications of ICI on GST and UAE VAT. So I now hand over the session to CA Ashish Chaudhary, and my request is people who have specific questions on the topic, which is on reverse charge mechanism, can post their questions, and after the end of the session we will take up certain questions, and balance unanswered questions we will be certainly reverting back to the people who have asked the specific questions. So I now hand over the session to CA Ashish Chaudhary.
Yeah. Thank you, Vikram. So am I audible? Vikram, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, Ashish.
Yeah. So, good morning, all the viewers. Today is 12th, and we are very soon reaching the first lockdown date, what was announced by the government, 14th April. Though it appears that this lockdown may not end on the 14th, and there is all likelihood of it being extended. Some of the states, as we all know, have already announced the extension, and there could be possibility of government sooner or later coming out with the announcement for the entire country. If we all see this period, whatever 15 days we all have spent at home, yes, certainly we would have faced many challenges. But yes, this was a time for us also to spend some time with the family or to go back to the basics in terms of the any subject or any fields in which you are working, you are practicing to get more in-depth idea of that particular topic or subject. This attempt of this webinar series has also been on that line where various speakers have taken various topics of practical relevance to see or to educate or to make a better understanding for the participants on the relevant topics. So in this series, today we are going to discuss on the reverse charge mechanism under GST. So when we talk about any indirect tax laws, primarily the liability is always on the person who is effecting supply. When we talk about GST, earlier it used to be your manufacturer in case of central excise, or service provider in case of services, or importer in case of customs duty. But in any indirect tax law, I would say not only in India, but the worldwide, there is always the concept of reverse charge mechanism. So when we look at what could be the reason of this concept being there in the law, yes, there are many areas in the economy where it is always difficult for the government to take the taxes from the uneducated or unorganized sector. And it is always easier to shift the burden to the recipient, where the recipient normally happens to be in the more organized sector carrying on its business activity. So the reverse charge mechanism is somewhere the concept which has come out because of this reason, where the charge is shifted from the supplier to the recipient. And if we talk about not only Indian law, as Vikram was discussing about the UAE VAT law also. So when we were implementing UAE VAT law, there also we had seen that the concept of reverse charge existed in the UAE VAT, and not only UAE VAT, this concept is well recognized in the OECD guidelines as well as under the UK VAT laws. Yes, certainly there are some differences when we look at reverse charge in India vis-a-vis reverse charge in the other countries. When we look at other countries, advanced countries, there the reverse charge liability is accounted and disclosed in the return, but there is no onus on the supplier, or I would say the person who is charged with the reverse charge liability, to pay that liability in the cash. That liability can certainly be discharged there by utilizing the input tax credit or the VAT credit, what those countries talk it about. But when it comes to Indian laws, yes, we all know that the reverse charge liability has to be paid in cash, and thereafter the credit of the same can be availed. And this concept of paying in the cash and taking the credit is not new to GST, because the similar provision used to exist in the service tax law also. So in this background, when we discuss the coverage of the today's discussion, so we will briefly touch the overview of the reverse charge. Thereafter, we'll go to section 9.3 and 9.4, specific services falling in section 9 subsection 3, and what are the issues in those services. Then certain goods where liability under reverse charge is there. Thereafter, the liability on the supply made by unregistered supplier. In the end, if the time permits, we will touch on the e-commerce operator, because this liability under section 9 subsection 5 of e-commerce operator is not strictly in the sense of reverse charge mechanism. It is a shifting of liability from the supplier to some other person, but that other person may not be recipient of service, and this is strictly not a reverse charge mechanism. But we will touch upon this in the end if the time permits. So when we talk about what is reverse charge, the word reverse charge, when we look at erstwhile indirect taxes, it was not defined in the previous indirect taxes laws. But if you look in the GST law, section 2, subsection 98, specific clause 98 specifically defines reverse charge means liability to pay tax by the recipient of supply of goods or service or both instead of the supplier of such goods or services. Now, the important part, if we see in the definition, it provides that the liability has to be discharged by the recipient of supply instead of supplier. Supplier, we all know that the person who is making supply of goods or service, and also include the agents who is making supply on behalf of such supplier. But the question comes, who is the recipient? Because to fasten the liability under reverse charge mechanism, first there is necessity to fix the recipient. There is a concept of the recipient vis-a-vis beneficiary of the supply. So there could be possibility that the recipient is Mr. A, but the beneficiary of supply is Mr. B. So normally I take an example. Let us say if I take my son of 4 years to a salon cut, where I ask that salon person to cut his hair. After cutting the hair, the payment to that salon has to be made by me, not my son of 4 years. So the question comes, who is the recipient of supply, who is the beneficiary of supply? Certainly, the beneficiary could be my son in this particular case, but the recipient of supply I will be, because I am the person who is liable to pay consideration for the supply made by the supplier. So if you look at the definition of recipient, it says recipient of supply of goods or service or both means where a consideration is payable for the supply of goods or service or both, the person who is liable to pay that consideration. Where no consideration is payable for the supply of goods, the person to whom goods are delivered, or where no consideration is payable for the supply of service, the person to whom the service is rendered. And any reference to a person to whom a supply is made shall be construed as a reference to the recipient of the supply and include an agent also. So if you look at the relevance of this recipient of service in the GST law also, we all know that there is reverse charge liability on the ocean freight, where the shipping line is outside India. Shipping line is providing services to the supplier of goods outside India, who is the exporter. But the liability has been casted under the GST law, that notification 10/2017 of the IGST, where the importer of goods is liable to pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism. The question came before the High Court, is it permissible to hold the Indian importer liable to pay tax under reverse charge for this ocean freight? Because the supplier of service, the shipping line is outside India, the recipient of service, exporter of goods is outside India. And when we look at the definition of reverse charge, it says where the tax is liable to be paid by the recipient of supply. If I distinguish it from the provision what erstwhile used to exist in the service tax law, where rule 2(1)D used to be there in the service tax rules, there when this reverse charge concept was defined, there instead of the word recipient, the word used was person liable to pay tax. What is the difference? If the law defines the person liable to pay tax, then there is no necessity to establish that he has actually received the supply of goods or service. Once a deeming fiction is created in the law, where a particular person is made liable to pay tax, be that person be recipient or not, the liability was on that person. But here in GST law, yes, there is difference between the reverse charge definition per se, the coverage per se, where any person cannot be made liable to pay tax under reverse charge. It has to be recipient of supply of goods or service or both. So this aspect we need to keep in mind whenever we are giving effect to, or whenever we are discharging any liability under the reverse charge mechanism. So when we look at, if we look at the diagram, yes, if it is a normal charge, then supplier Mr. X supply goods or service to Mr. Y, where Mr. Y pays the taxes to the supplier Mr. X, and thereafter tax is Mr. X to the government. If you recollect, there was discussion in the levy session where Mr. Rajesh Kumar TR had discussed that the liability to pay tax is on the supplier in the any indirect tax law. It is a contractual relationship between the supplier and recipient whereby the supplier can shift that liability to the recipient. But if, let us say, supplier fails to collect the amount from recipient, it cannot be said or supplier cannot claim exoneration from liability. He has to discharge his liability to the government. But when it comes to reverse charge, there the supplier makes supply to the recipient. Supplier is not supposed to charge tax on that supply because supplier is not going to pay tax to the government. Recipient will take the inward supply of the goods or service, will calculate applicable tax and deposit to the government exchequer under reverse charge. So before we proceed further, let us look a couple of important aspects in the levy section of the reverse charge mechanism. So if you look at section 9 subsection 3 of CGST Act, the section specifically provide that the government may, on the recommendation of the council by notification, specify categories of supply of goods or service. Categories of supply of goods or service or both, the tax on which shall be paid on reverse charge basis by the recipient of such goods or service or both, and all the provision of this act shall apply to such recipient as if he is the person liable for paying the tax. So one important aspect, if you look in this subsection, it provides that yes, there has to be a specified category of supply of goods or service, and if so, then the liability has to be on the recipient, where the recipient shall be treated as if he is the person liable for paying the tax. When we look at the statute book, sometimes the word used is as if he is person liable for paying tax. Sometimes the word used is as if he is the supplier. When we look at this section 9 subsection 5, which talks about the e-commerce operator, there the word used is where supply is made through e-commerce operator. In that situation, liability will be on that e-commerce operator and it shall be treated as if he is the supplier in relation to supply of such goods or service. So what is the difference between two? Once the recipient is put to the shoes of the supplier, in that situation, he has to discharge all the obligation under the law which are fastened to a supplier, be it registration, be it raising of invoice, be it filing of return, taking input tax credit, assessment, all the compliance what are applicable to the supplier has to be done by that person who is made liable to pay tax, and that compliance has to be done by him, not I would say technically as a representative capacity of those person on whose behalf he is paying the tax, but he himself becomes a deemed supplier under the law. So this is the difference between when we look at e-commerce operator vis-a-vis normal reverse charge liability. Then certainly next section is section 9 subsection 4, where we all recollect that when the GST law was introduced, it was the biggest nightmare for everyone to pay tax on the reverse charge on any supply received from any unregistered person. And considering the difficulty what was there in government had subsequently superseded or rescinded that notification from effective from 13th October 2017, whereby that reverse charge liability on the supply received from unregistered was dropped. Later on, government had amended this subsection, and the amended subsection specifically provides the condition for liability under reverse charge only for such class of registered person. So unlike earlier reverse charge where the liability was on all the registered person, here the liability would be only on the class of registered person, and such liability shall be for the specified category of goods or service received from unregistered supplier. So the condition what now has to be specified for liability under section 9 subsection 4 is there has to be unregistered supplier, the supply has to be of specified supply, and the recipient has to be registered person. Unlike section 9 subsection 3, where the supplier may be registered or supplier may not be registered. And when we look at the supplier or recipient, section 9.3 or 9.4, yes, there has to be separate notification for both the section, because the territory in which both the section are operating is different from each other, and both of the subsection cannot be governed by the single notification. So having discussed on the chargeability of the reverse charge, let us briefly touch on the what is the time of supply for reverse charge mechanism. Many of us may not be dealing with those goods where the liability comes to us as a recipient of supply of goods under reverse charge mechanism, but yes, there is specific provision or specific notification for the RCM liability for goods also. So in that situation, what the law provides, the time of supply will be the date of receipt of goods or the date of payment is entered in the books of account of recipient, or the date immediately following 30 days from the date of invoice. So if I am a person who is purchasing some goods from the agriculturist, where agriculturist is not required to be registered under the law, in that situation, if I am a registered person, I need to pay tax under reverse charge mechanism, and the point of time when I will be required to pay the tax would be the receipt of goods or the payment to that agriculturist, or the date immediately following 30 days from the date of issue of invoice or any other document. Why any other document has been mentioned? Because if the supplier is not registered, he is very much unlikely to issue the tax invoice. He can issue any other document also. When we look at the reverse charge for services, yes, the reverse charge liability in case of services arise on the date I make payment to the supplier, or the 61st days from the date of issue of invoice or any other document by the supplier. So here, if I have received invoice, let us say on 5th of April, and if I have paid advances to the supplier, so in that situation, my liability will be on the advance. If on the 5th of April invoice, I have paid before, I would say 5th of June, in that situation, that day will be my liability when I am paying. But if I do not pay within 60 days, then 61st day will be my liability. Then there is proviso which also says that where it is not possible to determine the time of supply under clause A or clause B, the time of supply shall be the date of entry in the books of account of the recipient of the supply. So wherever, for whatever reason, if it is not possible to identify the date of payment or date of 60 days, in that situation, this proviso triggers in. This proviso, I would say, was more relevant when there was liability on the unregistered supplier, where I could have paid in cash to the supplier by not specifically mentioning as to which supplier the amount has been paid, or there could be instances where the invoice might have not been issued by the supplier also. So in such cases, yes, liability will arise as and when I am making entry in my books of account. And there is a specific provision for the associated enterprise, which is defined as per your Income Tax Act section 92, where it says if any supply is received from the associated enterprise from outside India to India, in that situation, you need not look at the date of payment or 60 days from the date of invoice. The day you make entry in the books of account, on that day you have to pay liability under the reverse charge mechanism. Certainly, if you have paid in advance to your related party or associated enterprise, in that situation, the liability has to be paid in advance. So this aspect of associated enterprise we are going to discuss in little detail in the subsequent discussion. Then invoicing. Yes, in case of reverse charge mechanism, if supplier is the registered, supplier is going to raise the invoice to recipient, where the supplier will mention the liability to pay tax is on the recipient under reverse charge mechanism. But if the supplier is not registered, in that situation, the liability will be on the recipient to generate the invoice, which is called self-invoice, covered in the section 31 subsection 3 clause F. So this is applicable only in such cases where the supplier is not registered. If supplier is registered, supplier is going to raise the invoice. Payment voucher I have to issue to the supplier for paying to the supplier. Now, few questions what normally arise in terms of input tax credit under reverse charge mechanism. So when we look at the RCM liability, whatever we have paid, yes, we can take the input tax credit. The question normally is being asked, when can I take the input tax credit? So if I just look at the, just to answer this question, we need to look at what is the underlying document on which I can take the credit, and what is the condition imposed in the law for the purpose of taking credit. So let me compare what used to be under the central excise or service tax, where in the central excise or service tax, the document mentioned was that a challan evidencing payment of service tax. So that challan used to be my underlying document on which I could have taken the credit. And proviso in the rule 4 used to provide that this credit can be taken only when the service tax is paid to the government. So effectively, credit could have been taken based on the challan through which tax was paid to the government. But when we look in the GST law, here the credit can be taken under section 16 subsection 2 clause A, where it mentioned that where the recipient is in possession of a tax invoice or debit note or any other document as may be prescribed. And when we refer to rule 36B, it mentioned that an invoice issued in accordance with provision of clause F of subsection 3 of section 31 subject to the payment of the tax. So a question arises, when should I take the input tax credit? So if I have received a supply in the month of, let us say, October 2019, where I have paid the tax in the GSTR 3B filed in the month of November pertaining to October. So in that situation, unlike service tax law where I could have taken the credit based on the TR6 challan, here the document for me to take the credit would be the self invoice what I am required to generate under 31 3F, and I can take the credit in that 3B itself, provided I am making payment of tax in the case in the GSTR 3B file on the 20th November pertaining to the month of October. So yes, I can take the credit in the month of itself in which I have booked the expense, provided the immediate 3B in which I wish to take the credit, I must pay the tax also in that 3B. If I do not pay the tax, certainly I cannot take the input tax credit. Now, this is another question which is normally asked. What is the time limit of taking the credit? So today in our discussion, we are going to discuss on the various issues what are there in the reverse charge mechanism, and I am going to certainly express my view. And many of such views, yes, over a period of time could be subject to scrutiny by the court of the law. So whatever views are being expressed are our views, and it should not be treated as a professional advice whenever any decision is being taken by you in your business. So when we look at the time limit for taking credit, as we all know that section 16 subsection 4. Section 16 subsection 4, how does it reads? It reads, a registered person shall not be entitled to take input tax credit in respect of any invoice or debit note for the supply of goods or service or both after the due date of furnishing of return under section 39 for the month of September following the end of financial year to which such invoice or debit note pertains, or furnishing of the relevant annual return, whichever is earlier. So the question comes, let us say for 2018-19, I did not pay any tax under the reverse charge mechanism. And let us say first we take a situation where the supplier of the services was unregistered. So I took a service of legal services from lawyer, and the lawyer was unregistered. And I failed to pay tax by the due date of for 2018-19 by 30th September or 20th October 2019. Now the question comes, can I pay the tax now and take the input tax credit? Answer to this question would depend on this condition of 16.4. Is it condition qua invoice or is it condition qua supply? So what I mean to say, if the condition is framed in the law in such a way where the law provides that any supply pertaining to 1819, the credit can be taken by September 19. That could be one way in which law may be worded. Here in this case, whenever invoice is raised, it becomes irrelevant. It is the supply, the period in which that supply has taken place. There could be second alternative way of looking this provision, how it could be framed in the law. I need not look at the supply. I need to look at the invoice as to which financial year the invoice pertains. So if the condition is qua invoice, then the relevancy becomes as to the date of invoice. If the condition is qua supply, then the condition becomes the pertaining to the period in which that supply had taken place. Just to get more insight on this, let us go to proviso to section 16 subsection 4, which was introduced pertaining to financial year 2017-18. So here what the proviso says, provided that the registered person shall be entitled to take input tax credit after the due date of furnishing of the return under section 39 for the month of September 18 till the due date of furnishing of the return under the said section for the month of March 19 in respect of any invoice or debit note for supply of goods or service or both made during the financial year 17-18. So if you look at the difference in the language, what is there in the proviso vis-a-vis the main section, the proviso covers situation where the supply has been made in 1718. So the proviso covers situation where the condition is qua supply followed by the invoice. But the main subsection does not have such condition of qua supply. The condition here is only based on the invoice. So, presuming in taking my example where the services have been availed from the unregistered lawyer and I did not pay tax at that point of time, if I am raising invoice today, if I am paying the tax today, I need to raise invoice today. I cannot go back to the earlier date and raise invoice, backdated invoice. I need to raise invoice today, and if I pay the tax today, there is a possible view to claim that input tax credit can be claimed based on the invoice date or the date of such document. If I derive some more inference for this, so let us say it is not a liability under reverse charge, it is a liability under forward charge, where we all know that the supplier of service has to raise invoice within 30 days from the date of making supply. So let us say for financial year 2018-19, a supply was completed on 15th of March 2019. In that situation, the invoice should have been raised by the supplier by 15th of April 2019. But for some reason or other, the supplier could not raise the invoice by 15th of April 2019. Instead, supplier raised invoice on 30th May 2019. So in that situation, what shall be the time of supply? My time of supply, if invoice is raised beyond 60 days, it shall go back to the date of provision of service, which will be 15th of March. So the supplier will effectively have to pay the interest for the period of 15th of March to 30th of May. Now the question comes, can I take the input tax credit of that supply? If I link this supply with qua supply, so where the supply had taken place in 2018-19, if I place that interpretation to the law, then I cannot take the credit once the September time period is over, even if the invoice is bearing the date of 30th May. But if I place an interpretation that once the supplier has paid the interest for the delayed raising of invoice, he has made good the loss, what has been done by him. And for me, the relevant document for taking credit, time limit for taking credit is the date of such invoice, which is the 30th May. And the condition, if treated or considered to be qua date of invoice, then yes, I can take the credit. So when we look at the harmonious reading of the subsection 1 and subsection 4 and proviso thereof, vis-a-vis the example what I have taken for the supplier of service and recipient of service, there is a possible view to claim that the time limit for reverse charge would start counted from the date of invoice wherever that self invoice is generated. Yes, certainly the matter could be subject matter of litigation because there is no legal precedence as of now on the matter. Few more aspects relevant to reverse charge registration. Yes, whenever there is liability to pay tax under reverse charge, I have to mandatorily register myself. Even if I am making pure exempt supplier, I am otherwise not liable to pay tax under the law. Payment of tax, it has to be paid in cash. Yes, it has to be paid by 20th of the succeeding month. Liability under reverse charge is on the composition person who are under the composition scheme also. But when we talk about the reverse charge, there is to some extent double taxation in reverse charge. How this double taxation happens? So let us say, for example, I am a security agency service where I am an individual, I am providing services to the company. And after the amendment effective from 1st January 2019, I cannot charge tax on the forward charge mechanism. The liability has to be paid by the recipient under the reverse charge mechanism. But if you look at the definition of exempted supply, the definition of exempted supply includes the those supply where the supplier is liable to pay tax under reverse charge or where the supply is covered under the reverse charge mechanism. So for that, security services where the security service provider may be providing services to the company as well as to the non-corporate, in that situation to the company he will not charge GST, but to the non-corporate he will be charging GST. But when we look at his expense, certainly he would be incurring many expense in his business, which could be on account of uniform for those employee or other security equipment, etc. But he cannot take the input tax credit to the extent of the supply what he is making under the reverse charge mechanism to the customer. So in that situation where the tax would be paid by the recipient under reverse charge, it would be treated as supply by such supplier, and because he cannot take the input tax credit fully, to that extent there will be increase in the cost on the part of supplier, which ultimately some way or other that supplier is going to pass on to the recipient only. Yes, to that extent there could always be double taxation for the in case of reverse charge transaction. And when we look at the classification exemption, sometimes question is being asked whether the recipient can take the exemption under the law. So whatever exemptions are provided under the law, all those exemptions would be if the liability would have been on the forward charge. If the supplier was entitled to claim the exemption, same exemption would be eligible to the recipient also. So if we broadly look at services, what are covered under the reverse charge, we'll broadly run through that, and thereafter we'll discuss on the issues in most of or many of these services. So first service is what we call as import of service, where if the supplier is outside India, recipient is in India, place of supply is in India, tax has to be paid on reverse charge basis by the recipient. Used to be under the service tax law also. Then GTA services, we all are very familiar, where the tax has to be paid by the recipient. Legal services provided by advocate or firm of advocate, services supplied by an arbitral tribunal to a business entity, and sponsorship services are there. If you look at the person who are liable to pay tax, in various cases the recipient are fixed. It is not that always all recipient will be liable. So if you look at first import of services, the liability would be any person located in the taxable territory. But when we look at GTA services, here the liability would be on the specified person which are covered in the reverse charge notification. When it happens to be legal services, liability is only on the business entity. So if an individual is receiving legal services, that individual is not liable under the reverse charge. Similarly, if you look at sponsorship services, it is liable when the recipient of service is body corporate or the partnership firm. Yes, there could be services provided by central government, state government, union territory, other than some specified services which are excluded, then renting services provided by these governments. Thereafter, transfer of development right or FSI, which is provided to the promoter by the landlord or the person who is owning that land. Then long-term lease of land of more than 30 years, we all are going to discuss these aspects separately. Then director of a company, we all have been seeing in last week on the WhatsApp or the news that directors are liable to pay under, in case of direct services provided by director, companies are liable to pay tax under reverse charge mechanism, where the news was very prominent on the some of the leading newspaper plus on the WhatsApp also, consequent to advanced ruling by Rajasthan Advanced Ruling Authority. We are going to discuss on that also. Then services by insurance agent, where the recipient is the insurance company, or recovery agent, where the recipient is banking or NBFC. Then transportation of goods by a vessel from outside India to India. This is what ocean freight we were talking about. Then transfer or permitting use or enjoyment of a copyright, where it pertains to original literary, dramatic, musical or artistic work when provided to the author, music, composer, photograph, etc. So if I have written some story, and that story is, I would say, I have created copyright under section 13(1)(a) of the Copyright Act. So whenever I am providing that story to the producer or the composer, in that situation, the tax has to be paid on the reverse charge basis by the recipient. Then RBI related services, then direct selling agent services, then business facilitator, then business correspondent. These are some of the services which are sector specific services. Then again some general services. One is the security services, when it is provided by the security in the nature of services by way of supply of security provided to person, which is in the nature of body corporate. Then yes, there is this motor vehicle renting services, and thereafter service of lending of securities. So these are various services which have been covered under the reverse charge mechanism. What we are going to do, we are going to discuss the various issues what are there in the services which are relevant for most of the business. So first we look at the import of services. What are the issues in the import of services? So when we look at the definition of supply, section 7 subsection 1, what was covered in the levy section also, levy section webinar also, for the purpose of this act, the expression supply includes import of service for a consideration whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. So if there is an import of service for consideration whether it is not in the course of or furtherance of business, it is treated as supply under section 7 subsection 1 clause B. And when we go to schedule 1, where it says import of service by a person from a related person or from any of his other establishment outside India in the course or furtherance of the business. So the schedule 1 covers those instances where the supply has been received from my related party outside India or any other establishment of mine which is located outside India and I am located in India. So even if there is no consideration paid by the recipient of service in India, still it would be treated as supply of service liable to tax under the reverse charge. uh, I would say it would get covered in the levy section, and because the supplier is outside India and recipient is India, liability will be on the recipient of the services. When we look at section 7 of IGST Act, that section 7 of IGST Act specifically provides that if a person has branch office or representative office or any other establishment in a country, India and outside India, it will be treated as establishment of two separate person or two distinct person. So whatever we discuss in the course of domestic laws, where the head office and branch office are considered two separate person, similar explanation has been there in the section 8 of IGST Act, where this it has been specifically provided. I'll just read where it says, for the purpose of this act, where a person has an establishment in India and any other establishment outside India, then such establishment shall be treated as establishment of distinct person. And explanation 2 provides, any person carrying on a business through a branch or an agency or a representational office in any territory shall be treated as having an establishment in that territory. So in this situation where my head office or branch office, let us say I have the branch office in India and my head office is outside India, any transaction which is taking place between two would be treated as transaction between distinct person or the supply of service by that head office to the Indian subsidiary or Indian branch office as services provided by establishment located outside India to an establishment located in India. So when we look at this import of service condition, the import of service condition provides that any service supplied by any person who is located in non-taxable territory to any person other than non-taxable online recipient. So if the service supplier is outside India, recipient is in India, and the recipient is a person other than non-taxable online recipient. So this non-taxable online recipient has been defined to include the individual who is not in the course of business or the person who are not in the business and central government, state government, etc. So these persons have been specifically defined and covered in the scope of non-taxable online recipient. Other than these person, anybody who is located in India and who is receiving services from outside India, then he has to pay tax under reverse charge. What are the conditions for treating the services at import of service? Supplier should be located outside India. Place of supply of service should be in India. Recipient of service is located in India. So here we need to uh, establish or satisfy all these three conditions. So there could be possibility that, let us say, an intermediary is there who is located outside India, I have appointed that person as my agent in UK to market my product in that country where he is finding customer for me, and whatever supply of goods I am making in UK, I am paying commission to him at the rate of 5% of my realizable value from the customer. So now in that situation, what the place of supply provision provides, that in case of intermediary, the place of supply is treated to be outside India. So when the intermediary is located outside India, place of supply will be outside India. So even if when we look at the condition, yes, supplier is located outside India, place of supply is in India. No, place of supply is not in India, so it will not be treated as import of service and there is no liability under the reverse charge mechanism. But yes, we have to be very careful in terms of the difference between intermediary and market support service. Whenever it happens to be on the export side, department always try to establish that the services provided by you are in the nature of intermediary and it shall not be treated as export of service. But when it happens to be in case of import, there they always take a opposite route where they provide that the service what you have availed is in the nature of market support, it is not an intermediary. And actually when we look at the difference between two, there is a thin line of difference between two, where the intermediary is facilitating supply between two person, whereas in case of market support service, he is not facilitating supply, but he is providing services to me on principal to principal basis. He may be doing advertisement, he may be doing promotion services for me in that country outside India, but it shall be treated that the place of supply is in India, because in that particular case the default rule would be applicable, not the intermediary rule. So the agreement or the transaction, how it is structured between the parties, has to be carefully analyzed to before taking a final view whether it is an intermediary service or it is the market support services. Second situation, normally the question arises where, let us say I have imported some equipment from outside India, and those equipment I am to use it for a particular period, let us say 3 months, and after the importation and use of those goods, I am supposed to send back those goods to outside India to the original supplier. Now here also the question comes, what would be the interplay of the IGST on the goods what I have imported in the capacity of import of goods, vis-a-vis the consideration what I am supposed to pay to my vendor for the usage of goods for that particular period of 3 months. So if we look at the notification 85 bar 2017 under the customs provision, there it has been specifically provided that if the goods are imported in India for the purpose of usage as a transfer of right to use the goods for limited purpose, and where the recipient of service is paying the tax on the supply of service under reverse charge mechanism, in that situation there is no need to pay tax on the import of those goods in the capacity of the importation of the goods. So there are certain other conditions also attached to that notification, where the importer has to re-export the goods within a period of 3 months from the date of the expiry of the agreement for which the goods have been imported. And there are the other condition of, or I would say other ramification in terms of the drawback, etc. So here again the important aspect what comes, if the goods are imported on rental charges, lease charges, or transfer of right to use purpose. So in that situation, in order to avoid the double taxation, let us say I could have imported heavy equipment which has value of, let us say, worth 10 crore, and if I import those goods, I may have to pay, presuming IGST 18%, 1.8 crore as a charges for those equipment, but actually usage charges per month or rental for those goods per month may be 20 lakh rupees. So if I'm using those equipment for 3 months period, I need to pay tax on the 60 lakh rupees at the rate of 18%, not the tax on import of those goods which was on 10 crore value 1.8 crore. So this notification is there in order to remove the double taxation for the importation of goods. Similarly, when we look at the customs provision, under the customs, when the goods are imported in the valuation provision, there are specific inclusion, and some of the inclusion covers the royalty, license fees, technical know-how, drawing, design, etc., which are not included in the price of the goods, but which the importer is required to pay either to the exporter of goods or any other party located outside India. So let us say if I am importing some goods from UK to India, and I would say, let us say I'm in a automobile business, and the goods, that equipment what I'm importing, or the goods what I'm importing, in addition to those value of the goods, I need to pay royalty to the vendor. So in that situation, when I'm importing the goods, I need to include the value of royalty also for the purpose of paying the customs duty. But yes, royalty may be, it is again subject to valuation rule condition, where it says whether it's condition of sale or otherwise. So if it is presuming it is a condition of sale, I need to pay custom duty on that royalty component also. Now the question arises, when I will be paying royalty as a receipt of services to my supplier outside India, whether there will be again reverse charge liability on that royalty imported as a receipt of service or import of service from outside India. So here also there is a specific exemption notification under IGST which provides that if you are paying the customs duty on the royalty and license fees, there is no need of paying IGST on import of services to the extent the value has been included in the customs valuation. But important to note
that this exemption is only for the royalty and license fees. But if we go to customs valuation provisions, there only not these two services. Many other services may require to be included for the customs valuation purpose, but the lawmakers here have given exemption only for these two services. So if there are any other services, certainly there could be double taxation to the extent of the value included in the customs valuation plus the reverse charge payable on the import of those services separately. Then if the recipient of service is SEZ, in that situation there is an exemption notification which provides that if I am an SEZ unit, I need not pay tax under reverse charge on the import of services from outside India. Earlier we were discussing that in case of time of supply, wherever my transaction is with associated enterprise, I need to pay tax at the time of entry in the books of account. So many times what happens, there is the cost allocation by group company where the invoice is not raised by the group company at the year end, but for the purpose of accounting, I create provision in my books of account and expense is booked in my books of account. So the question comes whether the liability shall arise at the time of creating provision for expense in books of account to the credit of that associated enterprise, or it shall arise when I specifically book that payable money to the associated enterprise. So in that situation, there has been a judgment of Honorable Sestate under the service tax law where there used to be more or less similar provision in case of General Motors, where it has been provided that when the statute has specifically provided the date of entry in the books of account, it does not make any difference whether that entry is to the account of credit to the account of associated enterprise or it is some provision for expense. So long as you are booking that expense in the books of account, at that point of time your liability to pay tax under reverse charge arises, whether that amount is paid or not, or whether it is credited to the associated enterprises or not. So in case of MNC organization where the expense is booked, this decision may have to be kept in mind to evaluate whether any liability and at what point of time the liability has to be paid in case of import of services. Now, there could be various other situations where between the basically head office and branch office vis-a-vis holding company and subsidiary company. One question or issue what normally we have been listening from the participants and as well as the department also, when the dimming fiction which provides that the establishment in India and establishment outside India, it shall be treated as establishment of distinct person. And when we talk about export of service, please mind export of service, there cannot be export of service to my own establishment. So if a Indian subsidiary company is providing services to holding company outside India, which is falling in the export of service and refund claims are filed, in those cases, department in some of the location is taking stand that it is treated as establishment of distinct person because this holding company and subsidiary company are uh, nothing but part of the same group. So it will be treated as an establishment of distinct person. So it cannot be treated as export of service, and on this ground, refund has been denied to many of the exporters. But that is not the correct proposition of the law, because once I am in the law as separate legal person, then the dimming fiction of establishment of distinct person cannot arise. The dimming fiction will come into picture only when the supplier in India and recipient outside India is the same legal person, same juristic person. So again, some of the question what have been raised by department in the past is, let us say there is a head office in India and branch office outside India. And in terms of Indian requirement, the accounts of the branch office are consolidated in the books of account of the Indian head office. So the department had issued the notices in many cases holding that when the branch office accounts are consolidated with Indian head office, it is nothing but a services provided by the branch office from outside India to head office in India. So it should be treated as import of service, and there will be liability to pay tax under reverse charge on the recipient of service in India, which is head office in this case. But that is not the correct proposition of the law, because if you look at the schedule 1 also, which we had just now read, there it says import of services by a person outside India to a person in India in the course or furtherance of business where it is related party or the establishment of distinct person. So the condition of import of service has to be established. If the condition of import of service is not established, it cannot be merely said that that consolidation purpose accounting, there will be liability on the head office under reverse charge. That proposition is not the correct proposition of the law, and there is judicial precedence also in view of the DSP Merrill Lynch, where this similar view has been taken by the Mumbai Sestat. Then sometime what happens, let us say my branch office is outside India and branch office has incurred certain expenses in terms of, let us say, local taxi, local hotel charges, or promotional expenses there local, or the salary to the staff outside India. And later on that branch office seeks remittance from the head office in India, because let us say branch may not be carrying on any business at its own. It is there uh, in the course of setting up business, but does not have its on independent source of income. So in that situation, a question could arise whether there will be liability on the Indian head office when the remittance is made to that branch office for the expense incurred by that branch office in that country. So this could be like situation where the reimbursement is claimed by the branch office. Sometime what happens, the head office is sending money in advance to the branch office to incur the expense by the branch office in that country for the local purpose. So in that situation, again, the question arises, would it be treated as supply of service in the books of the Indian head office, and whether Indian head office has to pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism? So normally whenever it happens to reverse charge, we always take a stand. If the recipient is eligible to take the credit, there is no unnecessary question in getting into the interpretational issues, pay tax and take the input tax credit. But take a situation where the recipient cannot take the full tax input tax credit, or is not entitled to take credit partially. So in that situation, if we evaluate this particular proposition, when the branch office had availed the services of, let us say, taxi hiring in the UK, which is, so in that particular proposition, the services provided by the taxi service provider in UK to the branch office in the UK. Subsequently, the claim of reimbursement, what the branch office is claiming from the Indian head office, there is no separate supply involved by the branch office to the Indian head office. It is only reimbursement of the claim, whatever expense they have incurred, where the head office in India is supposed to reimburse or compensate to the branch office outside India. So what the important aspect comes in case of reimbursement, if there is an underlying supply, and in order to fulfill that underlying supply, I am incurring some expense, where the recovery of the reimbursement is made along with the underlying supply. In that situation, certainly the reimbursement value has to be included in the value of underlying supply, and the tax has to be paid on the reimbursement also. But in such cases where the head office is sending money to the branches for the expense incurred by the branch outside India, where it is merely remittance, it could be said to be a transaction in money, where there is no supply involved, and in the absence of any supply, there a view may be taken that there is no liability under the reverse charge. And on the similar line, there was judgment of the Milind Kulkarni in the service tax law. These propositions are yet to be tested under the GST law, but certainly yes, there could question arise in the GST law. In fact, I was reading some advance ruling in case of Kestrel some few days back only, it has come, where the foreign company has established a project office in India, and that project office, what has been established in India, the Indian project office has remitted money to that outside entity or the parent company. So in that situation, question comes whether it is an import of service. So what the view has been taken by the advanced ruling authority, that the purpose of establishment of project office under the FEMA and under the RBI provisions is in the nature of project office for the entity outside India. And in that situation, whatever remittance is being made, it is remittance to own. It is not that there is some supply of service. So when we are looking at this proposition, it is not only GST law, we have to keep in mind how we are giving effect to this transaction in terms of the FEMA provision, in terms of the RBI's requirement as to the purpose for which this remittance is shown, etc. So we have to be very clear when does the liability may or may not arise. But certainly if the branch is providing some service where some supply of service is made, some services are delivered to the head office, then the recipient head office in India would be liable to pay tax under the reverse charge. Then yes, sometime what happened, there is the cost allocation by the head office or by the holding company outside India to the branch office in India. or the subsidiary company in India. So if the cost allocation again is on account of some supply of service made by that uh, head office or the holding company, yes, it could be treated as import of service. There are divergent views in this also, but after GST, the proposition is more or less settled that if the cost allocation is towards some supply, certainly there has to be liability under the reverse charge on the recipient in India. Then again, one typical situation arises where sometime what happens that some expat are sent to India by the holding company for the subsidiary company in India, and the payment is made to those either employee or sometime the payment is made to the outside India to the holding company. So the question arises whether it is liable to pay tax under the reverse charge in the Indian entity as an import of services. So when we look at again this transaction, it becomes very important how the agreement or transaction is structured. If it is a like tripartite agreement between that foreign holding company, Indian subsidiary company, and Indian that employee expat who is in India for on the temporary purpose, where it is provided that the he will be deputed in India and there is employer-employee relationship in terms of the tripartite agreement, certainly a strong view can be taken that it falls in the Schedule 3, and wherever the payment is made by Indian subsidiary company, whether the payment is made to the account of the employees in India or it is remitted to the parent company outside India, it should be treated as covered by the Schedule 3 and there should not be any liability, because normally what happens in such cases, the supplier outside India or the parent company outside India, it pays to the employee because of the social security obligation in their country, and then it claim reimbursement from the Indian company. And there is, in fact, there is judgment of Supreme Court in the context of service tax law where this view has been taken. So again, important part will be, is it a payment made to the holding company by virtue of joint employment agreement, or is it a contractual manpower supply by the holding company to the Indian subsidiary company? Ultimately, it is how the contract is structured, contract is designed, and how the remittance, I would say, this effect is given under the other laws of the country that would finally determine whether there is liability under reverse charge or not. Then the issue of the corporate guarantee, many times what happens, my supplier of service or my holding company again is outside India and I am in India and I need to take some loan in India. For taking that loan, I do not have that financial credential. So that loan is, that corporate guarantee is given by that holding company to the bank in India uh, uh, for my credential, or to, I would say, where it undertakes to make good any loss what I have done on account of non-payment of that loan to the Indian bank. So in that situation, there could also be said to be that extending corporate guarantee by holding company to Indian subsidiaries in the nature of supply of service, and even if there is no consideration, it would get covered in the Schedule 1 and liability under reverse charge. So these were the various issues what normally arise in case of import of services. Now, when we look, we proceed to the next entry, which is on the GTA services. So in case of goods transport agency services, again, if you look at the coverage, what it says, the supply of service by goods transport agency who has not paid the integrated tax at the rate of 12% in respect of transportation of goods by road to. So there are specified recipient of service where it says factory, corporate society, or person registered under the GST law, LLP, partnership. So I would say practically everybody is covered other than the unregistered individual. So in those cases, the liability has been fastened to the person who pays or who is liable to pay freight for the transportation of goods by road, and he has to discharge the tax liability under the reverse charge mechanism. So here the first question arises. What is the difference between GT and GTO, goods transport agency and goods transport operator? So many times what happens, I have appointed a goods transport agency who is transporting goods from one location to another, and it is issuing consignment note to me. Wherever consignment note is issued, there is no question or there is no problem on determining the status of the supplier, because the definition of goods transport agency specifically provides that the person who is supplying such service has to issue consignment note. But many times what happens, let us say I have a shop and I need to transport some goods, let us say 5 kilometers from my shop to some other location, and I have hired some tempo locally. So in that situation, when I have hired the tempo locally, normally the tempo does not issue the consignment note. So the question arises whether such type of person, which are colloquially called as the goods transport operator, If we go, we will not go into service tax history, but initially the tax was under reverse charge imposed on the GTO, and then there was hue and cry, it was abolished, then again introduced on GT, and when at the time it was again introduced on GT, P. Chidambaran in the budget speech had specifically mentioned that we do not intend to tax on the goods transport operator, but the tax is to be intended to be levied on the goods transport agency. So wherever this consignment note is not issued, the question arises whether that person could be said to be goods transport agency or not. And if the goods transport agency, I need to pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism. When we look at again this exemption notification, transportation of goods by road is an exempted supply. But transportation of goods by road when made by GTA is not an exempt supply. So there is very thin line of difference. So let us say if a person who is supposed to issue consignment note but did not issue consignment note, can it be said that he is acting as a goods transport operator and there is no liability under the reverse charge? There were divergent views under the service tax law by various tribunal, where some of the tribunal had said that when the law specifically provide that the goods transport agency has to issue the consignment note, and if it fails or if it does not issue consignment note, it cannot be said to be that it is acting as a goods transport agency, and there is no liability under the reverse charge on the recipient. At the same point of time, there are other judgment also where it has been held that if the supplier makes some default by not issuing the consignment note, which he is otherwise required to issue, then he cannot take the benefit of his non-compliance by saying that I have not issued the consignment note, so I shall be treated as goods transport operator and there is no GST liability, there is no service tax liability on me. The matter has traveled to the High Court also. In 2019 only, in case of Kishan Sahakari Chini Mills Limited, Allahabad High Court has taken a view that even if consignment note is not issued, any other document like invoice, etc., normally it has the necessary requisite. So in that situation, also liability shall be under the reverse charge mechanism, and the recipient has to pay tax as a receipt of supply from the goods transport agency. So now again the question comes, then what all are covered in that exemption notification where it says transportation of goods by road? So what all will be covered in transportation of goods by road? So normally it could be said to be like small individual where they do not have the practice of issuing the consignment note. It is not that in my particular case the supplier did not issue consignment note. Those person who are owning a small vehicle who is using it for local transportation, there is no trade practice of issuing the note, and they are not in the booking through any other agency, but it is like any unknown person or some person came, booked the cargo and delivered to the destination. Probably those person could get covered in the definition of goods transport operator. But yes, wherever input tax credit is eligible, it is better to pay the tax and take the input tax credit, considering how the judicial views are coming forth. Now, many times what happens where the goods transport agency, let us say I have asked the good transport agency to provide me 10 vehicles where the GTA itself has only 6 vehicles and it takes another 4 vehicles from some other party. So again, the question arises whether the supply of service by that first person to the second person, that is the my vendor whom I have assigned the contract for 10 vehicle, and where his vendor, so whether my vendor is supposed to pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism on the supply received from his vendor. Mind you, if a position is taken that my vendor is liable to pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism, in that situation, there is always going to be the cost escalation because my vendor cannot take the input tax credit if he is under the 5% route. So whatever tax he is paying under the reverse charge on the supply received in respect of those 4 vehicles from his vendor, that will become cost in the transaction. So in that situation, the possibility could be that the supply of service by that original vendor to my vendor could get covered in the goods transport operator, because in that entire movement, the consignment note is finally issued by my vendor to me, where he has taken the onus or responsibility of safe transportation of the goods. His subcontracting agreement further either could get covered in the goods transport operator, or there is another exemption entry which says hiring of means of transportation wherever it is provided by other person to the goods transport agency. So possibility can be examined to claim exemption under that entry. If it does not fall into any of these, then certainly there could be cost escalation in the transaction. So that aspect has to be kept in mind. Then yes, there was circular in the service tax law which provided for incidental services. So as a transporter, if I'm providing any services, I do provide the services of handling, loading, unloading. So whether that is treated as a separate service or it forms part and parcel of the transportation services. So there it has been clarified that these services are part of the same bundle service, so it should get subsumed in the transportation services. The same proposition can continue in the GST also in the definition of composite supply, where I have appointed the transporter to make supply of goods from one location to another, and in the course of transportation, there is need of loading, unloading, which is done by the transporter either himself or through some other agency, but he is raising invoice separately to me towards the car that handling part and the transportation part. So once a view is taken that it is a composite supply where there is a no separate uh, requirement or there is no separate assignment of service for the loading, unloading, it could form part of my transportation service, and reverse charge should come on the gross amount including that loading, unloading charges. Then if you look at the rate notification for the transportation, where there are two options, 12% under forward charge with input tax credit, 5% under reverse charge without input tax credit. So normally under the question arise whether when I am paying the tax under reverse charge, can I take the input tax credit where the rate notification says 5% without input tax credit. So here, yes, we need to keep in mind that let us say if I am a transporter and I am providing services to a factory, in that situation, that condition of non-taking the credit would apply to me as a transporter. It will not apply to the recipient. So recipient can certainly take the input tax credit or whatever tax he is paying under the reverse charge mechanism. I will not, if I take the input tax credit, then he cannot take the, he cannot pay tax at the rate of 5%. So again, the question comes whether that recipient should claim or should take any undertaking from the transporter that I have not claimed an input tax credit. But what the law says, there is no such condition in the law to take that condition. And earlier when this type of proposition used to be there the department had issued a circular that recipient has to satisfy that the supplier has not taken the input tax credit, and that because there was no such condition in the notification, that circular was struck down. So in the absence of any specific requirement in the law, there is no requirement for the recipient to claim that undertaking from the transporter. But yes, if he takes, it is always on the safer side. Now, certainly, normally a question arises if transporter has also charged the tax under the forward charge, whether my liability under reverse charge continues. Yes, your liability under the reverse charge is independent of the transporter liability. If transporter has charged it, it is his mistake, but his mistake cannot exonerate you from your liability. You have to pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism, irrespective of whether transporter has paid or not. In the litigation in the past, some of the cases, the court has taken a view that once the tax has been paid to the government twice, there cannot be tax on the same amount again from the recipient. But later on, that view has also been diluted, where the liability has been fastened on independently on the supplier and the recipient. So in FRCM, the liability on by the recipient has to be independently discharged. Then normally a question arises whether if the tax is charged under the forward charge by the supplier by mistake, whether I can claim the input tax credit. Yes, though there could be department objection, but again in the context of the earlier law, there are various judgment under the central excise, where in the context of manufacturing also, and under the forward charge also, reverse charge also, where the supplier has charged the tax, I can very well take the credit because government cannot enrich itself at the cost of the citizen. Nature of tax liability, if my transporter is outside India and I am, let us say I am in Gurgaon, sitting in Gurgaon, and my transporter is of Delhi. So in that situation, because the supplier of service is outside India and I am the recipient of service in India, I need to pay tax under the reverse charge. But many times it becomes difficult to determine what is the location of supplier, because many of the big transport company have the presence across all the states. So whom should I consider that who is the supplier of service? Normally, the practice being followed is have consignment note state-wise. So if I am getting the consignment note from Delhi to Gurgaon, yes, I could treat it as an interstate supply and I need to pay IGST. Certainly, if I have an agreement specifically with the Delhi unit of the vendor, it would be treated as interstate supply. Then the next service, which is again very prone to, I would say, is the services provided by government. So couple of aspects what we need to keep in mind when we look at the government related services, there are in the law, central government, state government, union territory, local authority. these four service provider, when the services are provided to business entity, the liability arise on the business entity reverse charge. Please mind that there are two more definition of governmental entity and government entity and governmental authority. So in case of government entity and governmental authority, there is no liability under the reverse charge. The liability is on the supplier of service under the forward charge wherever applicable. So in such situation, wherever services are provided by government, liability has to be paid by business entity. And in case of renting of immovable property service, the liability will be on any person who is registered under the act. Now there is a fundamental question, what is always there, whatever I'm paying to the government, it is in the nature of fee or tax. So if it happens to be in the nature of fees, then liability could be under the reverse charge. But if it is in the nature of tax, there cannot be tax on the tax. And this aspect was discussed in the first session on the levy and supply, where the principle of supply was discussed. So I'm not again going to touch this aspect. The matter is already pending before the 9-member bench of the Supreme Court to decide the distinction between levy and tax and levy or tax and fees. Whenever we see these services provided by government, if you go through the exemption notification, there are various services provided by the government which are exempted. So any payment, whatever is made to the government, that has to be very carefully examined to see, first of all, is it in the nature of some tax or levy under any other law. If it is in the nature of tax, there is no liability. It falls out of the supply itself. If there is liability, then we need to see whether in the exemption notification there are any exemption. Then again, if you look at the exemption, some exemption are qua nature of supply, some exemption are qua supplier and recipient. So we need to keep aspect of those aspects in mind. If my service is not falling in the exemption, then I need to pay tax under the reverse charge. Again, to recollect, some of the services of the government are taxable under the forward charge also. So wherever forward charge, there is no liability under the reverse charge. So normally when we look at like MCA payment made to ROC. So is it a supply of service by government to the business entity? A view is taken, yes, and there is liability under the reverse charge. There is the exemption notification which provides that if the total value of supply received is less than up to 5,000 rupees in a year, whether a single supply or continuous supply, there is no reverse charge liability. But if there is anything beyond that 5,000, then reverse charge liability arises. So MCA payment fees, registration fees. So when we look at the registration fees, if registration is required under any law for the time being in force, then there is exemption. If there is renewal of any registration, there is an interpretational issues whether that renewal would also get covered in the registration or not. So there could be license fees, renewal fees, etc. So we need to examine it in the context of exemption notification as to which all services are taxable, and if taxable, then liability has to be paid under the reverse charge. Now coming to services provided by directors, which has been of the recent hot topic. So this recent advance ruling of the Rajasthan Advanced Ruling Authority in case of clay crafts, where the advanced ruling authority unfortunately has not considered the entry in the schedule 3, which provides that services provided by employee to employer is not liable to GST. So when we look at director services, the director could be my whole-time director, it could be my independent director, it could be my managing director. So when does liability to pay tax under reverse charge arise, and when it does not arise? So if you look at that entry of schedule 3, it says services provided by employee to employer. How to determine the services provided by employee to employer? It is not only the income tax provision wherein you are deducting TDS, but it is also the employment agreement what is there with the director. So if the employment agreement provide that he is responsible in day-to-day affairs of the company, and whatever he is going to draw from the company is in the nature of, or the payment to be made to the employee, in that situation there cannot be any reverse charge liability, because it is not treated as supply under schedule 3. But if I am paying to any director any consideration which is not in the nature of the employment agreement, in that situation, the liability will be on the recipient company under the reverse charge mechanism. So what we need to keep in mind, yes, we have to very carefully see what is the uh, agreement or appointment letter of the director, the board of resolution passed for the appointment of director, what has been the scope, how the income tax is deducted for that directors under the income tax law. So all these aspects has to be cumulatively seen whether it will get covered under the reverse charge or not. Now there is one more question what is normally asked is, if I am a director and as a director I am providing some other service in a professional capacity also. So let us say if I'm a director, independent director of a company where I'm getting sitting fees from that company, and there is no doubt that I would be liable to pay, a company would be liable to pay tax under reverse charge on that sitting fees. But in addition to that sitting fees, I am also providing some services in the capacity of professional to that company as a chartered accountant. So the question arises whether the company is liable to pay tax under reverse charge for that particular services. So if we look at that particular entry, that entry provides that services provided by director to an entity. So here they are not specifically mentioning that services provided by director in the capacity of director. So a view may be taken by the department that it is an entry which is qua supplier. Once the supplier is in the definition of director, then any services provided by him shall get covered under the reverse charge mechanism. That could be an allegation, but in our view, the intention of the entry is that only those services which are provided by director in the capacity of director, those entry should or those services should get under the reverse charge. But as of now, there are no legal jurisprudence on this matter, and certainly this matter could be subject to litigation in the time to come. Then yes, there is sponsorship services. Again, there is very thin line of difference between sponsorship services. There is no definition of some sponsorship services under the GST law. We briefly refer to the service tax law, where it says in sponsorship service includes naming an event after the sponsor, displaying the sponsor's company logo, trading name, etc. So wherever there is some display of banner, logo, etc. put up, in that situation, it could be said to be falling into sponsorship. And if it is there is no such proposition, then it could fall into advertisement services. In case of advertisement services, liability is on the forward charge on the supplier, but in case of sponsorship services, the liability will be on the recipient of service under the reverse charge mechanism. So the person who is sponsored, who is giving that money for sponsorship, tax under reverse charge. And please mind, the liability is on the both the company as well as the partnership firm, where the partnership firm include LLP also. Now again, here one typical question many times arise. Let us say in this period of COVID-19, I am giving donation to some NGO, etc. And in that donation, there is some program also which is being organized by that NGO, and wherein I am given my name, logo, etc. is disclosed. It is shown over there. So the question arises, is it a sponsorship or it is a donation? How is it? So any donation where which is in the nature of sponsorship, where some commercial or benefit is the donor, and which is not in the nature of advertisement, there could always be liability on the person who is giving that donation if he is getting some commercial mileage out of that particular donation, and which is not in the nature of advertisement. So here everyone has to be very careful to fine tune, to have to understand or to distinguish the difference between this consideration vis-a-vis advertisement and sponsorship, to see if it is not falling into the consideration, there is no liability at all on any party. If it is falling into advertisement, the liability may be on the person who is receiving that money to pay tax under the forward charge. But if it is falling into sponsorship services, the tax may have to be paid under reverse charge basis by the person who is giving that sponsorship money. If you look at the next entry, which is the renting of motor vehicle. So again, this is an entry which was there in the service tax law, which they have introduced in the GST law also. This entry was first introduced in the October 2019, where the law had specifically provided that services provided by way of renting of motor vehicle provided to a body corporate. So the coverage of the entry is renting of a motor vehicle. So renting of motor vehicle could be anything. It could be bus, it could be four-wheeler, it could be anything provided to a body corporate. So recipient should be body corporate. Now there was question, who is the supplier? The language what the lawmaker had used was very confusing, where it was mentioned that any person other than a body corporate paying central tax at the rate of 2.5% on renting of motor vehicle with input tax credit only of the input service in the same line of business. So the question had arisen, if they are saying that they're paying central tax at the rate of 2.5% or the 5% IGST, so if I am paying the tax as a supplier 5%, then where is the question of IGST by the where is the question of sorry, reverse charge payment by the recipient? There cannot be tax on the both the person. So there was the lacuna in the drafting of this language of the notification, wherein subsequently they had modified that entry to provide that any person other than a body corporate who supplies the service to a body corporate and does not issue an invoice charging central tax at the rate of 6%. So here what now they have provided that if I am providing any services to a body corporate where I have not issued the invoice with 12% rate, in all those cases, there will be liability under reverse charge on the body corporate who is receiving the services. So if I'm charging tax at the rate of 12%, I have to charge it under the forward charge. If I'm not charging, then the tax has to be paid by the other person under the reverse charge. Again, here a question arises, if the supplier is unregistered, whether that will also get covered. In our view, this supplier of service where they are seeing any person, so any person, it may be registered or unregistered, that person should be other than a body corporate. So in that situation, the liability should be on the reverse charge basis on the recipient, even if the supplier is unregistered. Again, this entry is not under section 9.4, this entry is under section 9.3 only. But the important part is whenever it happens to be of vehicle which is other than bus having more than 13 capacity including driver, I cannot take the input tax credit. So the tax what I'm going to pay under this reverse charge mechanism is going to become a cost for me. So again, normally a question arises if an employee has gone for some official purpose where he has incurred some expense and subsequently that employee is claiming reimbursement from the company, whether the company has to pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism. So to answer this question, again, it would depend on in what capacity the service is availed by the employer. So let us say if I'm in Gurgaon and if any of my employee goes to Ahmedabad where that employee avails services of renting of motor vehicle locally in Ahmedabad, in that situation, the service provider driver in Ahmedabad providing service is giving to that employee in individual capacity. Subsequently, it is prerogative or I would say contractual understanding between employee and myself whether where I may reimbursement that amount to him or I may not. That reimbursement again could be lump sum reimbursement, it could be on case to case basis reimbursement. So if the original supplier where the supplier was providing services to that my employee in Ahmedabad, if that at that point of time that services was provided by that supplier in the capacity of that employee being my representative capacity, in that situation certainly the tax has to be paid by me as a company under reverse charge. But if the services were availed by the employee in individual capacity and subsequently claimed reimbursement from the company, there could be a strong view to claim that liability is not on the company under reverse charge because the recipient of company was capacity of employee and the provider was also employee. So the tax has to be charged under the forward charge by the supplier. Again, please note that this Ola, Uber, etc. are not covered in this because those Ola, Uber are covered in the e-commerce operator where they will be charging tax under forward charge as a body corporate. So now coming to this OSIN freight entry. So as we had discussed in the beginning, in case of Mohit Minerals, High Court has taken a view that there cannot be any liability on the OSIN freight where the tax is already paid by the recipient on import of goods and the liability can be only on the recipient of service. And here the Indian importer is not recipient of service, so there cannot be any reverse charge liability. But the question comes, how should I proceed? Should I stop paying the tax? What is the applicability of High Court judgment in other state? So when we look at the principle of jurisprudence where the judicial precedence principle provides that in case of any central tax where the High Court judgment is there and there is no contrary judgment in any other state. So in that situation that High Court judgment is prevalent or has binding force across the country, this particular tax is payable as a IGST tax under the IGST Act, which is a central act. So there is a view that this judgment of the High Court has applicability across the country. But whether government is going to remain silent or they are going to file the appeal before the Supreme Court, that will come to know in time to come. But till that point of time, what should be our course of action? Certainly, if a person is entitled to take input tax credit, he can take a view to pay the tax under reverse charge and claim the input tax credit, certainly, but he should write it a letter to the department intimating to the jurisdiction office that though there is High Court judgment, but in order to avoid litigation, they are paying the tax, though it is not liable. Wherever the tax liability is, wherever the input tax credit is not eligible or wherever the credit is already getting accumulated with the importer, in that situation, one can certainly take a view that the High Court judgment has binding force across the country, so there should be no GST liability under the reverse charge. Third situation could be in past cases wherever a person has paid the tax but could not utilize the credit, can they file the refund claim? Certainly, once the levy has been struck down, where the High Court has said that levy itself, in I would say ultra virus the act, that entry in the notification, so the whatever amount has been paid, it loses the characteristics of the tax, and the government also doesn't have any right to retain that amount. So the refund application can certainly be filed, but we need to keep in mind the time limit for filing the refund application. Then there was the security services, what was inserted from 1st January 2019. Again, this is applicable if the provider is person other than body corporate, recipient is any registered person. So we need to distinguish between the rent-a-cab service where the recipient has to be body corporate. In case of security services, any registered person is liable to pay tax, whether that registered person is body corporate or not. There could be other than security services provided by the security agency where it is not by way of supply of security personnel. Those services continue to be under the forward charge mechanism. Then yes, there were the construction related services, what we had seen in the beginning, where liability will be on the promoter or developer who is undertaking that construction project. He has to pay tax on the transfer of development right or long-term lease of land, which is more than 30 years. There are a couple of more issues in the RCM. First issues we had already discussed, ITC can be taken in the same month or not. Then RCM implication in case of COVID period. So where we all know that government has already extended the due date of filing, not the due date of filing, government has given the extension for the filing of return where I can file it without payment of interest after the 15 days from the due date, and thereafter at the rate of 9% of interest in case of assessee having more than 5 crore turnover. So a question arises, can I claim the RCM input tax credit? Certainly, if I am filing 3B delayed also, but once I am filing 3B and I am paying the tax in cash, I can take the credit, input tax credit based on the self invoice in the month in which pertaining to which I am filing that GST R3B. So the proposition what used to be earlier continues to be same for the COVID period also. Then one normally question arises where let us say NRI is outside India and the property is in India and I am also in India. So whether there is liability under the reverse charge? Yes, in case of rental services where the property is in India and the supplier of service is outside India, tax has to be paid under reverse charge basis by recipient of service. But if it is a residential property, we all know that there is an exemption notification. So in case of residential property, there is no liability under the reverse charge. Quickly, we will go through the liability under 9(4), where we had discussed, unlike past, where all the liability under all the inward supply from the unregistered person were covered. Now only those liability are covered where it is a specified categories of nature and only specified categories of person. So presently, only the construction sector is under the reverse charge notification, where it provides that if any person who is the promoter and who is supplying the construction services or supply of building under construction phase, then he has to he has to take all inward supply from the registered person. If there is any shortfall 80%, so that shortfall he has to pay under the reverse charge, whatever be the nature of supply, other than the cement and capital goods, where it has to be 100% from the registered person. So if I am a developer where I am purchasing some goods from the unregistered person and my total purchase, the 75% is from the registered person, 5% purchase is from the unregistered person. So I need to pay tax on that 5% value under the reverse charge at the rate of 18%, irrespective of the applicable tax rate for that particular supply. But let us say if I have purchased all my 80% from the registered person, but cement 20% I have purchased from unregistered person. In case of cement, there is no exception. Even if you purchase 1 rupee of cement from unregistered person, tax has to be paid under the reverse charge mechanism. So these examples are there which can be referred in the presentation which has already been mailed to you and would be circulated later on also if somebody has not received. Now we'll briefly touch on the liability on RCM on the goods. So normally in case of goods, the liability is on the forward charge mechanism of the supplier. But in case of agriculturist, this liability has been fastened on the recipient person who has taken supply from the agriculturist. So cashew nut, not shelled or peeled, or bidi wrapper, or tobacco leaves, or silk yarn, raw cotton. In case of silk yarn, any person who manufactures silk yarn. Then supply of lottery is there, where the supplier is state government, but tax has to be paid under reverse charge. Then this is again important, where used vehicle, seized or confiscated goods, old and used goods, waste and scrap, wherever these are supplied by the central government, state government, union territory or local authority, and the recipient is registered person, in that situation the recipient has to pay tax on the supply of these goods. But if the recipient is unregistered, then these government department has to get registration and pay tax under the forward charge mechanism. Then priority sector lending certificate, again any registered person. So these are the goods where the liability has to be discharged by the recipient of supply instead of supplier of goods. Last, we will touch on the liability of e-commerce operator, where the provision provides that the government may, on the recommendation of the council by notification, specify category of services. So here the goods are not there. Specify category of services, the tax on interest at supply of which shall be paid by the electronic commerce operator if such services are supplied through it, and all the provision of this act shall apply to such electronic commerce operator as if he is the supplier liable for paying the tax. So unlike 9.3 and 9.4, where it was mentioned that as if he is the recipient liable for paying the tax, no, here it is saying there it was mentioned as if he is the person liable for paying the tax. Here it is mentioned as if he is the supplier liable for paying the tax. So what does this mean? That like Ola or Uber, if we take the example, Ola and Uber has to compulsorily take the registration. There is no need of taking registration by individual driver who are providing services through that e-commerce operator, and that invoice would be raised by Ola or Uber in its own name to the recipient of service. Tax has to be discharged by the Ola Uber. And please note that in case of e-commerce operator covered under section 9.5, there is no liability of TCS, because here the supplier is not liable to register, so that driver is not required to register under the law. So the notification has been issued under this section, whereby this some of the services has been made liable to pay tax under this e-commerce operator provision, where these are transportation of passenger by radio taxi or maxi cab, or the hotel services, or this plumbing, repairing, etc. So in case of those services, the tax liability has to be discharged by e-commerce operator. But please note, this is not a reverse charge entry. This is a third nature, where neither the supplier is liable nor the recipient is liable, but third category of person is liable, who is not directly providing the service or receiving the service. If that e-commerce operator does not have the presence in India, then any person who is representing such electronic commerce operator has to discharge the liability and make all the compliance of the law. And if there is no representative also in India, so in that situation, that e-commerce operator would require to appoint some person in India for the purpose of making compliance under the GST law, and that person has to discharge all the liability, take registration, and make the compliances. So this is the broad overview of e-commerce operator. Certainly, this could be an independent topic, because there are various practical issues on the e-commerce operator. But considering the coverage of the topic and the time limit, we are only just touching on the broad conceptual aspect of e-commerce operator. So this is all about the discussion what we had on the reverse charge mechanism. Now we can take up the questions of the participants one by one.
Yes, thank you, Ashish, for the wonderful session. Generally, I think the concern is in terms of, say, outward supplies, people have control over the levy and the charge rate of tax, because it is their own outward supplies. But the concerns of RCM, where there are a lot of open questions, unclear territory, whether applicability is there or not. So all these, I think, you have touched upon. So I'm going to ask certain questions.
Yeah,
Though
Vikram,
hello.
Vikram, other than whatever I have covered, if you have anything to add, certainly you can also add for the benefit of participants in the reverse charge.
Okay. So first, I think we will finish off the questions. So there are certain questions which have been answered by you, but I think few people have joined late. So certain questions I will also ask. The first one is, when can you take input tax credit on RCM, whether it is in the same month of payment or the next month?
So yes, we had a detailed discussion on this, that unlike erstwhile service tax and excise law, where the input tax credit could have been taken only based on the TR6 challan through which I am paying the tax, under the GST law, the relevant document for me for taking input tax credit is my self invoice. So if I have received any supply in the month of April 2020 and I am raising self invoice in April 2020, while filing my GSTR 3B in the May, presuming I am filing by 20th May, I disclose my liability and GSTR 3B in the month of May, and I am paying the tax through cash ledger in that 3B only. Then in that 3B itself, I can take the input tax credit based on the self invoice what has been generated by me in the month of April. So the basis of taking credit is the self invoice, or if my supplier is registered, the invoice raised by the supplier subject to payment of tax to the government.
The next question is the supplier has issued invoice with GST in case of an RCM transaction, whether the liability still exists in the hands of the recipient under RCM.
So this also we had discussed, the liability of the recipient charge what is created under section 9 subsection 3 is independent charge on the recipient. So once the statute has created charge in the hand of the recipient, the tax charge by the supplier, that is devoid of the levy provision. So once it is devoid of levy provision, it loses the characteristics of the tax. So I continue to be independently liable at my own for the inward supply what I have received, notwithstanding the supplier has charged tax on that supply. But if matter comes for litigation, courts have taken views in the past that there cannot be twice tax on the same transaction. So once the supplier has paid, there is no need for you to pay under reverse charge. That proposition also has been diluting over a period of time in the judiciary also. So strictly speaking, from legal perspective, your liability to pay tax under reverse charge continues to be independent even if the supplier has charged tax on the invoice raised by it.
Yeah. So in summary, what Ashish is saying is that even in case your supplier has charged GST in his invoice, option 1, ask the supplier to revise the invoice without GST, wherein you pay the GST under RCM. Option 2, if you have already paid to the supplier and there is no question of getting a revised invoice, you still go ahead and pay the tax under RCM because there are judgments which are also against the assessee in the same matter.
Yes.
The next question is in the context of ocean freight. So the question is with reference to the High Court judgment, and the judgment has struck down the notification creating the levy under RCM. So because you are also touching upon a point that if it is a case where you are eligible for credit, do you pay the tax and take the credit as a conservative stand if you don't want to take a risk? And I think this question is coming from two perspectives, Ashish. The first
Yes.
perspective is the High Court has also touched upon one of the points, which
Recipient.
is observed that the question of eligibility could be a doubt. So that observation is there in the High Court. And the second question is also the other speakers and the general understanding is that once it is not a tax, it becomes a payment. So then will there be a challenge of ITC?
Okay, so I'll address this aspect. So when we go through the High Court judgment, when the High Court has said that I am not a recipient of supply, so once I am not recipient of supply, I am not liable to pay tax under the reverse charge. At the same point of time, when we go to the input tax credit provision, once I am precluded from the definition of the recipient of supply, the question could come, am I entitled to take input tax credit? Because input tax credit can be taken only by the recipient of the supply. So here the practical dilemma arises. If I pay tax under reverse charge and tomorrow department could say that in view of the High Court judgment, you are not the recipient, so you cannot take the input tax credit. It could become cost for me. Vis-a-vis, if I do not pay the tax and their department says it was liable to be paid tax, but you did not pay tax. So it is a double-edged sword. How should I proceed? So when we look at this proposition, what we understand, there is very much likelihood of government going to the Supreme Court. First of all, this judgment is very beautifully written, and it has covered very beautifully all the aspect of the taxation in terms of the import on the ocean freight liability on import of goods. So the government is certainly going to go to the Supreme Court. So in that proposition, if a decision is taken not to pay tax under the reverse charge, and tomorrow if the judgment of Supreme Court is there, or if there is a retrospective amendment in the law where the law provides that there is liability where the defect is cured by the government, in that situation there could always be liability of interest on me. Vis-a-vis, if I have paid the tax and taking input tax credit. So when I'm taking the input tax credit where it is not in the nature of tax but in the nature of amount, if I go to erstwhile Central Excise Act, there many times it used to happen that the activity what I am doing did not amount to manufacture, but I was on the understanding that it amount to manufacture, so I charged the excise duty to the customer. Subsequently, after a few years, Supreme Court held that this activity does not amount to manufacture. Then the question came, what was the nature of that amount? Is it a duty or it is a amount? So there has been consistently held by the court that once the tax has been paid in by this manufacturer as excise duty, and once it has been accepted by the government, whether you treat it as an amount or duty, the manufacturer is entitled to take Senvet credit of its purchase, plus customer is entitled to take the excise duty of the tax charged by the manufacturer. So coming to this proposition also, as far as the second observation that this is not a tax in view of the notification entry struck down, it is only an amount, those judgment under the erstwhile act can very well be applied. Now the second aspect, that recipient, once I am taking a stand to pay tax under the reverse charge, which I as suggested earlier should be done under the protest, but once I am doing this, I am treating this that I am falling in that exemption, in that rate notification, and because of that rate notification, I am treating myself as an import of service, or I would say recipient of service and paying the tax. So with that protest letter, certainly you can take the credit even if it is questioned by the department. Once the government has accepted the tax liability, in view of the all past precedent, credit of the same cannot be denied. But just to add one more point, the letter what you write to the department, if you are paying the tax under reverse charge, you should clearly mention that we are taking the input tax credit. But if subsequently, if input tax credit is denied for some reason or other at the apex court level, then we preserve our right to file the refund claim for the same, treating it as an amount. So that could be the possibility what can be practically followed in the present situation, till more clarity emerge in view of the Supreme Court judgment or any retrospective amendment by the government. Vikram, you can add anything if you have some.
Yeah, so I think Ashish has summarized it well. So broadly, if I can look it into two parts, one is this ocean freight. So where you are going to pay a tax after this judgment, it is advisable to file a communication to the department saying that you consider this levy and you are paying this RCM, and you also consider that you are treated as a recipient for the purpose of levy under section 9(3). So that gives you a leeway in terms of the eligibility of credit and specific mention of the availment of credit. The second point is, if you decide not to pay, it is also advisable to write a communication to the department in view of this judgment. This is the stand taken. And anyways, there are precedents in the past in terms of credit eligibility even when the levy itself failed. So those judgments can be referred in case where there is no RCM liability, but still it was paid by the recipient. Ashish, the next question is, one second. Do you need to pay GST under RCM in case of GTA services received for movement of exempted goods?
So now again, if we go to exemption notification for GTA, if we carefully look at some of the items have been exempted when transportation of those items are done by goods transport agency. So I'll say it like this. For example, rice. There is transportation of rice. If the rice is unbranded, it is not taxable when supplied as a rice. If rice is branded, there is tax liability of 5%. If I go to exemption notification, it provides that transportation of goods by road by a goods transport agency of agricultural produce and rice, etc., is exempted. So whenever the rice is transported by goods transport agency, be it taxable at 0%, be it taxable at 5%, there will not be any tax liability under the reverse charge. At the same point of time, there could be many items which are exempted from levy of tax, but those are transported by goods transport agency. So in that situation, if the transportation of those goods is not covered by the exemption notification, there will be reverse charge liability under the RCM. So just to conclude, it is not the rate of tax on the goods which determine the reverse charge liability on the goods transport agency services. It is the exemption notification 12/17. Whatever goods are covered in that service exemption notification with respect to transportation of goods by GTA, only transportation of those goods are covered in the exemption category where recipient is not required to pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism.
Yeah.
Yes, Vikram.
So in summary, it is not based on the leviability of the goods or the rate of tax of the goods. It is the type of goods or the type of transactions which are exempted under the exemption notification for GTA. The next question is this time limit under 16.4, whether it will be applicable even for bill of entry for import of goods.
So if I look at bill of entry, again, if you look at 16.4, in case of 16.4 entry, what it says, debit note, invoice or any other document as may be prescribed. Sorry, I am repeating myself. When we look at 16.2, which put the condition for taking input tax credit. So in 16.2, what the law says, the recipient of supply should be in possession of tax invoice, debit note, or such other tax paying document as may be prescribed. So for taking the input tax credit, I must be in possession of tax invoice, debit note, or such other document as may be prescribed, where the bill of entry is such other document prescribed under the rule. But when I go to 16.4, in case of 16.4, only invoice and debit notes are covered. There the lawmakers have not referred any other document or tax paying document as may be prescribed. So there is clear cut difference between the language of 16.2 vis-a-vis 16.4. So in that, considering that difference in the language of the law, certainly there is a strong view to claim that the time limit of 16.4 is not applicable in case of import of goods, because the restriction or condition is only for the tax invoice and the debit note, not for the bill of entry or any other document based on which input tax credit is taken.
So we'll take two more questions. The next one is in case of educational institutions receiving services from an advocate, whether RCM is applicable.
Okay. So if we look at this section 23 and section 24, section 23 provides that any person who is providing only exempted, who is engaged in making exempted supply, that person is not required to take registration under the law. Then section 24 provides for the compulsory registration in certain cases. And prior to 23, there is section 22, which provides for person liable for registration. So when we look at section 24, it starts with notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1 of section 22. So it means where the 22 provides that registration is required to be taken subject to limit of 20 lakhs or 40 lakhs as the case may be. If I fall into 24, that limit is not applicable and I need to pay tax from the first rupee itself. This section 24 is not overriding effect over section 23. Which is giving an interpretation that once I am liable to pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism, in that situation, it does not make any difference whether I am engaged in making exclusive exempted supply or what is my turnover limit. I have to compulsorily register myself, pay tax under the reverse charge mechanism, and if I am making further exempted supply, then I cannot take the input tax credit of the same. It will become cost for me.
Yeah. So last question is whether rent paid to director for commercial property would be liable to RC.
So this aspect also we had touched, whether rent paid to director. In our view, the payment made to director in the capacity of director should get covered under the reverse charge, but the language of the law is not specifically mentioning this. So there is always, or there could always be going to be a litigation on this. So my view, suggestion on this, if the director is registered, otherwise under the law, let the director charge the tax, company take the input tax credit, because once the tax has been paid, you can very well claim that argument that there was interpretational differences and the tax has been paid to the government. If director is unregistered because of the threshold limit, etc., to avoid the possible dispute, you can take a decision to pay tax under the reverse charge, but certainly that interpretation still also exists, that the only those services which are in the capacity of director are only liable.
Okay. So maybe in simpler terms, since it does not fit into the exclusion of Schedule 3 of employee-employer, and it is more of a rental payment and not a remuneration for employment, so this would be subjected to the levy. So if it is a case where you are eligible for credit, I think it is very clear you pay the tax and take the credit.
Yes.
So we thank you all for joining the 6th session of this webinar series. So there are 2 more sessions in this series 1. So we hope you all enjoyed the knowledge which has been shared by various speakers. Any final comments by Ashish, and then we can close.
Yeah, thank you all the viewers for taking out time on the Sunday in such a large number, being there for a couple of hours. I hope you will enjoy Sunday for rest of the day. Just to remind you, tomorrow's session on the assessment would be taken by Mr. Venkatramani, a very renowned speaker from Bengaluru. So all are requested to join the session. And if you have other also connect who have not joined today or who have logged out, you can certainly pass on that message to all of them. So with this, thank you very much for hearing, and I hope I would have been able to add some value in the topic allocated to me. Also, thanks a lot, Vikram, for giving me this opportunity to share my views on the reverse charge mechanism. Thank you very much.
Thank you.